Kevin Leach is the main director for Sabre Training Advisory Group, a professional military training non-profit. Their aim is to give Ukrainian defenders the skills to come home alive. Kevin is a Canadian Armed Forces veteran with a long history of working in Ukraine and in military affairs. He served as a sergeant from 2008 to 2018, specialising in armoured reconnaissance. He also leads a weekly segment on the Mriya Report called Come Home Alive, covering key elements of training for the Ukrainian army. Welcome to Silicon Curtain. Please like, subscribe, and definitely add comments against the videos. It is a tremendous help in moving the channel forward. Please also do check out the validated Ukrainian charities that appear in the description of the video. And when you've done that, if you have anything left, do consider buying me a coffee. It does help to keep the channel going. Kevin, I'm delighted to welcome you.
And thank you. I'm delighted to be on.
No,
Um,
we had a good chat before we hit record. There are tons and tons of themes here, but let's explain first of all why you're in a car on a mobile phone. That probably is interesting context for the audience.
yeah, no. So of course, even the power outages are even hitting us on the base that we work on, and so I had to make a little drive to the village to get on a 4G signal because all of the Starlinks were out.
And this is a problem, isn't it, across the country? I mean, it's not a military secret, but the strikes of Russian missiles are really having a bit of an impact, aren't they, across the country?
But
And you were talking about Kharkiv in particular. Some people will be aware from recent news coverage that there was a massive strike against a very important energy infrastructure in Kharkiv during the so-called ammunition famine.
yeah, it was pretty much the biggest power station. It's one that you drive past, the biggest power station in Kharkiv, and it's one that you drive past when you enter the city from the west. Um, I don't know how extensively it was damaged, but enough to take it offline. And that has, whereas last summer and well, pretty much everything between now and the winter of 2022, we had very stable power. It was just something that we didn't worry about. And yeah, during the time when air defenses were running out of ammunition, the Russians took the opportunity to cause a lot of damage. And now the power outages, at least to my subjective reckoning, feel worse than they were in the winter of 2022.
Mm.
It's not having, I don't think it's having the effect on morale that the Russians wish it did. Like I said earlier, it to many people, it's just another inconvenience to work around. You schedule your day, you do your laundry, whatever work you have to do on your computer, you get that done while you've got the power, and then go out and do other things when the power's out. It's lucky with our work because it's mostly practical that power or not, it's not going to stop us walking through the forest with the troops and setting up positions and things like that. So that's yeah, to put it shortly, it doesn't have the effect that the Russians wish it did.
And that
But
was
it
going to be
certainly
my
is an
question. And
inconvenience.
is there any strategic impact, or is it really fitting very much in with their policy of flattening towns, targeting civilians, destroying cultural centers, hospitals? I mean, it seems to be a strategy of causing pain as opposed to serving what we might see as a acceptable military objective.
This is the national or the nation state equivalent of a spurned lover throwing acid in the face of someone that rejects them. It's just kind of like, okay, well, if we can't own you, then you can't own yourself. Nobody else is allowed to own you as they view the West. Um, and yeah, it is. It's really just trying to ruin things um, because they can't bring it under their control. And there's no, of course, there are certain strategic effects, but again, we're smart enough over here that strategic industries are going to be power is going to be triaged, and hospitals, for example, are going to receive a steady flow, or they're going to have big generators installed. any kind of factory that's responsible, things, maybe people making FPV drones, um, these places will still have steady power. Even honestly, if they destroyed every power station in this country, we've got all the generators left over from 2022. So no, I don't think it's having a strategic impact. That's, of course, I have a very narrow view as just one person, but uh, it I don't think that they care about that. I think it's definitely more of this Russian attitude of just, well, we're gonna smash the place up because you won't give it to us.
It's very much a sort of scorched earth type policy, isn't it? And one of the notable things that I've seen there is, you think of the German invasion in the 1940s as being utterly devastating. In fact, for many citizens, it was. But it's the Russians that destroy infrastructure, destroy economic infrastructure, in some ways far worse. And there are many pictures showing German occupation side by side with Russian occupation. And you can see, the stuff that actually survived the German invasion is now being utterly, wrecked by the Russians' indiscriminate use of, say, artillery, glide bombs, that kind of stuff.
It's the same. It was the same thing that the Russians did when they were retreating out of the territory that they held in eastern Ukraine back in the Second World War. Is they're destroying everything as they go in order to not leave it to the Germans. And it's just their MO. We've seen it in Syria as well. I don't know if they did that much of this in Georgia. I haven't looked into that conflict very much, but certainly we can see it as their standard playbook in eastern Ukraine. Cities like Severodonetsk and Bakhmut, Avdiivka, they just, now Vovchansk is the most recent one. They it it's weird because it's not even like scorched earth in the Second World War where they thought, okay, we don't want to leave this to the enemy. They're doing this in places that ostensibly they want to take control of. And Mariupol is another phenomenal example. They destroyed that place, and of course they make a show of, oh look, we're rebuilding, basically painting the outside of buildings they've destroyed, and the inside, replacing the windows too, and the inside's completely trashed. But from the outside, they, oh look, we've rebuilt it, and it's kind of like I don't know, it's weird. It's like a cargo cult of some kind. Like if you just, fake it till you make it. If we look like a functioning actor in the international stage from the outside, then people will treat us that way. And maybe there's something to it, considering what we talked about before about how escalation management is working and how people are responding to these threats, because they extend that kind of like, basically, I think a lot of democracies are looking at Russia and going, okay, so Russia's said that they're going to, like in the case of England, Medvedev said they're going to drop a nuclear bomb. It's going to make a tidal wave, hit Britain and sink the entire island. Well, we would never make such a threat unless we intended to follow through on it. So probably they intend to follow through on that threat. And it's just not understanding maybe I'll stick with that term of cargo cult diplomacy, where it's like I'll build myself up and make myself look like a really tough character on the international scene. Never mind, I'm ready to fall over, and then people will just believe it. We'll fake it till we make it, and I think that's where this stuff fits in. So they smash the place up while talking about brother nations and how we love Ukrainians so much that because there are little Russians. Meanwhile, they destroy everything. It's all kind of a consistent set of behaviors, and one that I think only now leadership in the West is starting to cotton on to.
And it's driven by lies and aggression. Unfortunately, that works. That works where there isn't pushback, where it doesn't hit against a hard barrier that pushes back against it. And this is one of the reasons you're in Ukraine. So it'd be great to understand, what you're doing and what impact you're having. But then we should definitely get onto this topic of the autocratic toolkit and
Yes,
escalation management, and why we are not matching or meeting or countering Russia's core strategy and MO.
definitely. No, so just a little more background. So I have lived in Ukraine since 2018. Previously, I worked on the OSCE Special Monitoring Mission as a ceasefire monitor. So that's what I did from 2018 until 2022 when the full-scale invasion began. And it gave me, those 4 years of being able to really see Ukraine and in a relaxed way, and not have to fall back on all of my old soldier skills. It gave me just such a wonderful view of this place and the resiliency that existed here. And this is, of course, I also later on married a Ukrainian woman. But I think that regardless of whether or not I met my wife here, that I would have stayed anyway. Um, because when the full scale invasion began, it just it left. There was no question in my mind that I had to do something to support the Ukrainians, and I slowly evolved towards training as I understood the need for it. Um, but it tying into the sort of the pushback question, it was also like, yeah, it's like, hey, we're uh, those of us who are here, those of us that know Ukraine, those of us that have a moral compass, um, we have to push back um, against the Russians. We have to create that counter pressure. And it's, there's you mentioned the toolkit of autocracy, and I think that uh, if I can be as arrogant enough to say people like me, but no, other volunteers, people that are out here working and doing our best to support Ukraine. I think that we represent the part of the toolkit um, of democracy. And I don't say, we touched on it earlier. I don't say democracy like it's this unassailable remote god that is acting in the background, but democracy is a technology. It's a set of practices that we actually need to operate as human beings. And it's more than just voting. It's about getting out and making your voice heard, and or living your values. In the case of the volunteers that are out here, we are demonstrating to uh, leaders in the West, you can come out here and act and do these things that would be considered escalatory, and there's no, that's just not happening. There's no escalation. There are just for the example of training, um, there are dozens, if not hundreds, of NATO veterans out here, individually plugging away, and in teams, um, bringing the knowledge and the tools that are needed by Ukrainian forces, in the format that is needed, in a way that's I would say culturally adapted. And no one's sending the FSB after us. We don't even, obviously every once in a while we get mentioned in, things like track a Nazi merc, or foreign combatants or whatever, these little troll pages. But it's not it's not being made to focus. And so that is really, like, your people can quibble, but NATO veterans are NATO veterans. Like I spent 10 years in the Army. I went through leadership school. I am now taking what I was trained in, and modifying it as needed and presenting it to Ukrainian forces, and all of our instructors are doing that. And where's the escalation? Because that is functionally NATO participation, and this is exactly what the Russians keep saying is a red line. But hey, we're out here, and probably I would say every year I think dozens more volunteers as the situation develops, and people get, I don't know, they wake up. More volunteers are coming out, and if that's not spurring this escalation, then why would we assume that, um, for example, NATO instructors in the country would? The Russians will sit there and say, "Oh, that's going to make them a legitimate military target," but I guarantee you, the Russians are terrified of what happens if they were to even accidentally kill NATO troops on the ground out here, because that would prompt more of a response, and they're doing everything they can to discourage more participation from the allied nations. And that's that should be these things all should come together and really show uh, allied leadership, and I think it is happening, that the response to people playing out of the autocratic playbook and toolkit is not to withdraw, not to go, okay, fine, we're going to cede this territory to you. No, it's really to open up the toolkit that we have in our democratic countries, and say, okay, we're now going to play the same game. We're going to play out of our book for this game, which works a lot better. Free societies have much more innovation. They have, in a free society, an organization like Sabre can exist because we individually, everyone that makes up our team, feels empowered to go and basically conduct security force assistance as an NGO, which is, I think, quite a new concept. You don't see that in autocratic countries, and I think North Korea is going to be the most extreme example. The average North Korean citizen doesn't even feel themselves empowered to believe that Kim Jong-un is a normal human being. So are they going to be driven enough to innovate, to create? No, and that's why you don't see, you look at the quality of ammunition and the things that are being given by North Korea to Russia, and it's all stuff that was cooked up by the Soviets in the 50s and the 60s, and as soon as that innovation was gone, there's no, like North Korean society just halted. They can't make anything new. They talk about it. They talk about it all the time, about all their, we have this wonderful new missile that's going to carry a nuclear warhead, but in reality, it's just 60-year-old ballistic missile technology. And this comes back again. They're just hoping that nobody calls their bluff. Now, it's a different situation in North Korea because they have, Seoul, the capital of South Korea, is in normal artillery range. So it's not calling that bluff would have not catastrophic, but it would have serious uh, consequences for South Korea. But not every country is in that same situation. Here, we are already having the catastrophic consequences. And what we need is we need the leadership in the West to be sort of brave with their careers, because let's face it, the consequences for the Western leadership is maybe they lose an election and they don't have such a plum political job. But be brave and make big calls and push that support out here. And it's one thing that we've seen recently with training. President Macron making the commitment. It's a politician's promise, so we'll see. But making the commitment to bring French instructors out here to Ukraine, that's exactly, honestly, even if it's just something that you're talking about, it's that's what we need. That we need the counter. Yeah, the counter to this big Russian bravado is that we need allied bravado, and we need allies saying, interesting point, Russia. We're now going to double the amount of artillery production, and we're now committing these taxpayer funds to building out new factory capacity in Europe, or the American government. We've just made another order, and Raytheon or whatever is opening up a new production, or reopening one of their production lines. This is the kind of leadership that we need coming from the West, and the sooner it happens, the better it's going to be for everyone, because we'll have that. I'm just gonna move my phone here. It's gonna get cooked.
Mhm.
Um, the sooner that we have that leadership, the better. And the, it's what people will see is that it's not going to have the doomsday effect that the Russians threaten us with, because they it's like a microcosm of this was when Turkey shot down the Russian fighter that breached their airspace. You know, the doomsayers would have you believe that that's Casus Belli, and the next day you're going to have the Black Sea Fleet rolling across to invade coastal Turkey. And no, what happened instead was that they were a little miffed, and Erdogan had to go and basically say a little, hey, a little mea culpa, so we can keep trade relations and tourism going. And really, that was the big threat, was we'll stop sending quite so many, or there won't be quite so many tourists coming to Turkey. Um, and it just goes to show you that you really can, to bring it down on a person to person level, you can punch Russia in the face. And they'll tell you all these things are going to do to you. If you punch them in the face, show them that that the strength that you have, they will just, it's like a drunk in a bar. Suddenly they'll forget all about the issue that they had with you, and they'll go focus on some other thing. But you have to show that strength.
I mean,
And
Russia
it's
has
something that
shown,
we're,
if nothing else in this conflict, then it can be repeatedly punched in the face and doesn't
yes.
have anything to come back at you. Um,
it,
it's interesting your
it
point about NGOs being able to organize and innovate. One of the ironies, of course, is that definitely Russia, and to an extent China as well, not only do they not allow this kind of innovation, this kind of agency within society, I suspect they don't believe in it either. They don't understand or believe in the concept of sort of organic, self-organizing mechanisms. It's one of the reasons they invaded Ukraine. It's one of the reasons they miscalculated everything. They just don't understand how those mechanics work. So to an extent, they'll know that organizations like yours exist. They'll know to an extent what that's doing for Ukraine and Ukrainian resilience. They won't, I guess, understand that you're independent. They'll see you as an extension of US geopolitical and military power anyway. So this idea that putting trainers in the country is escalatory, no, they already see themselves at war with NATO. They already believe that NATO has a significant presence, even if it doesn't.
that's exactly right. There's people that sometimes even Ukrainians who think that we're receiving some kind of black budget allotment, which I really wish were the case. It would make my life a million times easier. But no, one thing I want to come back to there is not believing in the ability of people to self-organize. And you got to, you look at the history of and the ideological atmosphere in Russia and in China. These are places that are coming. They have these strong Marxist regimes. Russia maybe not so Marxist anymore, but still coming out of that proud tradition in the way that it views people as being essentially machine parts, interchangeable. You just swap one out for the other, and then you have ironic for Marxists, but you have this ruling class that are the ones that can do all the thinking, and everybody else is just a cog. Yeah, they can't reckon with groups of people that just say, hey, here's a cause that I care about, I'm going to work toward it. And I think it's sort of their um, you look at the way they approach the foreign agents law and the stuff they're trying to do now in Georgia, where they view every single NGO as a state organ, and it's not. Let's be realistic too. There are NGOs that are part of government agendas. That thing is not unheard of, but not all of them. And when you have an NGO that's like okay, it may receive funding in terms of grants from overseas, but it's staffed up entirely by local people, and led by local people, started by local people. That's not a no. That states like to believe they've got a lot of influence, but they usually don't have that much. Um, because you can see that with well, hell, look here when Russia was trying to start up all kinds of like they had all kinds of fake political parties here, not fake, but I mean controlled political parties here. Not everyone, but a lot of the people that oppose us made a huge fuss about Zelenskyy shutting down like the New Socialist Party and oh damn, I forget the name of the other one, but it was oh yeah, Opposition for Life. These political opposition for life. That's it. That's in their name. Opposition to what? Opposition to Ukrainian nationhood. Um, it's like these are okay. This is what it looks. That's what a state-controlled non-state entity looks like. Not a bunch of young, dynamic 20-year-old, to continue the Georgian example, Georgians or Ukrainians that are just saying like, "Hey, here's a value I believe in. I'm going to advocate for it." Um, but it shows it shows that inability to view the the individual human as a person with agency. And ultimately, I think that's why they're going to lose, because I think that we are going to outmaneuver them with that just human innovation. Uh, we're finding solutions quicker than they are. Maybe not a like maybe we're not able to resource those solutions as quickly as they can because they've got a state budget and they're robbing their people to uh, it's like it's feudal. I think people Russia is much better understood as a feudal fiefdom than as a modern nation state, because you look at how for example, they're conscripting all of the service crews like road repairs and municipal work crews. They're conscripting all of these
Heating
guys to go
engineers, and
fight.
it's one of the reasons their
Yep.
heating catastrophically went wrong in so many towns over the winter.
And it's just like a medieval lord levying too many peasants, and then you got too many of the peasants killed, and now we can't bring in the harvest, so now there's a famine. Oh, whoopsie daisy, just a little autocracy problem. Um, but that's why I have faith long term that we are going to defeat them. But it comes to like, we've got the innovation, we've got the people. We just the way that I put it is we built the machine, but we need fuel for it. And whether that's material resources or financial resources, it is going to have to that assistance is going to have to come from the West, like it or not, because the way I put it is Ukraine is absolutely a first world country. You think in terms of the services and the level of development, but it's a first world country that happens to be very poor. Um, and so that's where it's some people may be getting a little bit tired of a lot of Ukrainian causes sort of with their hands out, but that's war, baby. Like it's not going to stop until the war is done. And you know, you're welcome to be resigned, you're welcome to be tired, but absolutely you cannot ever give up. And
This
and
is
it's
this
and
is
that
one of
goes.
the unfortunately more potent and effective Russian propaganda narratives, and that is, well, you had Iraq, you had Afghanistan, now you've got Ukraine. It's just an endless series of wars. And I even heard, the point of view. In fact, you hear it a lot. Well, why is the West super focused on Ukraine? Ultimately, it's because they're white and Christian and whatever. Um, but if you compare Iraq, Afghanistan, and Ukraine, the US in particular tipped, I mean, I need to pull the figures together, but infinitely more resources into those conflicts in countries that didn't have a native democracy, that
Yep.
didn't have a tradition of democracy, where you're trying to graft an organ into a body that is actively rejecting it. Whereas Ukraine, a sovereign country, a sovereign democracy, a country that we could actually learn from. There's the perception that it's just another one of these types of conflicts, whereas actually we're expending a fraction of the money. And for that fraction of money, the US's number one geopolitical foe, Russia, their army has been practically decimated. And not only that, we're supporting a country that is innovating techniques to fight oligarchy, fight corruption, and, trawl its way out of the sort of Soviet Russified morass.
No, that's a perfect. It's a perfect comparison that sort of shows why those people that say this is just another boondoggle like Iraq or Afghanistan, why they're wrong. And no, you nailed it with the tradition of democracy here. It goes even further back than most of this, say, prominent allied nations. You had something that it's a very evocative image, but it's you go back to the Cossack on his horse, and he has a horse, he's got his pipe, and he's got his pistol. And God help the person that tries to stop him going on his way, because he's not going to hurt anybody. He just has decided that he wants to ride from one town to the next. But that's his will, and if you try and stop him, you're liable to get shot. It is you know a nation that has that tradition is naturally going to trend toward real sovereignty, real democracy. I often say one of the things that really has me hopeful for democracy uh, in Ukraine is the general Ukrainian attitude, and it's every person I've spoken to out here, almost without exception, uh, feels themselves sovereign, feels themselves able to participate in society, whether it's starting a club or starting a political advocacy party or some sort of like a group or whatever. Um, they truly participate in the technology of democracy here, and that means that supporting them is like, yes, you're not grafting an alien organ into the body politic, because it has already it's already there. And what's more is that now culturally Ukraine is very distant from the West, and it's something that a lot of Westerners struggle with when they first get out here, just adapting to how things are done. Just as an example, like for us, I have gone through some official channels, and we had some limited success in establishing training. But it was like, if you, for example, if you wanted to go any further, then you needed to go through like really super official channels. I would need like an ambassador, the Canadian ambassador, basically, to ask if I could speak to some other high person. And then, it was a giant muddy mess. But with, oh, and by the way, that those official channels, it was like 3 different meetings, weeks apart. It was a nightmare. Um, versus the setup that we have now, where we have permission to work on the base. We have, I got I got told how much ammunition we're getting for the range that we're doing 2 ranges tomorrow, and the next day, small arms and heavy weapons. And I was given the list of ammunition that I got for that, and it's basically my dream come true. And so for all of that, to establish that strong relationship, that was one meeting with a brigade commander in his friend's tattoo parlor, and his friend just happens to be also a friend of mine. And so it's a different way of doing things. It strangely, and I'd say it is like less official, but it's not. But that's not the right way to put it. It's just, anyway, it's a different way of doing things, and it's one that I think a lot of Westerners struggle to understand when they first come out here. But it's also part of our value proposition as an organization, is that we can help uh, reduce that friction by just saying, like, look, yes, you do the official channel thing, but also let's go to dinner, and I'll introduce you to this commander, and he will get you permission to come on the base. It's a little. I think some people, I think too, sometimes that's the people mistake that for corruption, like getting something done through a personal connection. But the difference between that and a corrupt interaction is that I didn't have to pay the brigade commander any. I just had to show him the work that we'd previously done, tell him what we wanted to do, and he said, okay, come on in. There's no exchange there. It's well, other than knowledge, other than us doing our best to make sure that his troops get back alive. And I'm afraid I've gone on a bit of a tangent there, but it's illustrative of why Ukraine is uh, such a different nation from Iraq or Afghanistan. There is that, I would say it's ultra democratic. It's ultra accessible. And it's felt that way ever since I got out here. Just Ukraine felt like a place where if you wanted to start something, you could, whether that's a business, whether that's an NGO, whatever. It's a wide open field. And so if we saw these costly failures trying to graft artificial democracy in a place where it maybe wasn't even asked for, we will have tremendous success, and for the Russians, catastrophic success, if we put a fraction of the effort and the funding into things here. And one of the things that it's a concern for us, and just even for me personally, and I think also for people that are skeptical of resource use out here, there's never going to be the cash bonanza for private military contractors here like there was in Iraq and Afghanistan, because in Iraq and Afghanistan, they basically, our side went in, smashed apart the existing government and existing military structures. Some could say out of necessity, some could say it was a mistake to do that, but then went to try and rebuild it from scratch according to our cultural understanding. And that, it's a I'm not going to use the colonialism word to describe that, but it's definitely a kind of cultural arrogance. Hey, don't worry, we got this all sorted out. We're going to come and stamp it on top of you guys. It doesn't work, and it won't work here. But the structures, the government here is intact, it's functioning, society is intact and functioning, and Ukrainian soldiers are confident enough in themselves to say, yes, thank you for this lesson, but it's not really relevant. Here's why. And so in order to bring the tools that we have to offer from our countries, it's going to be a million times easier. There's going to be way less friction, and it's actually wanted. The Ukrainians want to know, how do we do things efficiently? How do we do efficient governance? How do we do efficient investigation of corruption? Although, and again, you said it, and I think that our Western countries can learn about countering corruption from Ukraine. And it's not to say that Ukraine has, congratulations, Ukraine has defeated corruption and all corruption is gone. No, but there are things like the process for procurement in the Ukrainian military is it's not 100% transparent, because there's some things that they're not going to say exactly what it is they're buying or building, but the contracts are all transparent. Who the company is, what the requirement is, and how much they have bid. And that's huge. Like in Canada, we don't have that, and we have a very, very messy procurement system as a result. So I've gone on a very, very long soliloquy here, but it's because you really touched on something that's very, very important, and it's uh, close to me. These are things that I think about very often.
And that's where we come back, I think, to this idea of the toolkit of democracy. And that's not to say, right, we've got all the answers for how to fight oligarchy, corruption, etc. But it's to say that, accept our democracies are in transition and look around at what works, but then put it all together into some kind of package we can export. Because, and this is the thing, isn't it? Russia is not just a regional threat. The idea of Jake Sullivan and others that it's some kind of, regional problem that can be contained, that can be managed, micromanaged, and you're on top of that. No, it's like a giant pustule, oozing everywhere. It's exporting autocracy. It's exporting its terror methodologies, its methodology of lies and aggression, but the mechanics that sit behind it, these are all exportable, and it's actively doing that. Do you feel that we're not
It's
recognizing that and we're not countering that?
Oh, absolutely. You look at the number of African nations that have recently asked the U.S. to withdraw their training forces there. I think Niger was the most recent one. And this is a yes, Russia and autocracy in general is a cancer, and it's a cancer that we risk metastasizing in large parts of the world because we're we're not viewing it. Yeah, we're saying, oh yeah, don't worry, this can be contained, when the evidence is sitting there saying no, it can't be. Well, okay, perhaps it certainly could be contained if you tried. Um, if you brought the tools of democracy to bear. And it's sort of we see this, just mentioning tools, in the training context. Whenever we start working with the new unit, I'm always very, very careful to specify to them, hey, we're not coming here to tell you guys exactly how to do every little thing. We're coming here to give you a set of tools, and these tools are going to, standard things. For example, mission planning. This is how as an officer you plan a mission. This is how as NCOs you receive direction from the officer, and then you delegate that. It's been delegated, pieces have been delegated to you. You delegate it down further so that you're not micromanaging things. And that's the best thing that we can offer to Ukraine, I think, in every case, is okay, what are the tools that we use? Just kind of thinking, here's something like antitrust law. This may prevent the formation of monopolies. Here is I don't know. I like all of the elections that I've been here in Ukraine for have been observed by international missions, and I think that's an amazing thing, because you're like, everything from the polling stations to the ballot counting is being observed by international teams. And maybe I'm sure this might be a little controversial, but maybe that's something that the West could learn from, is have and not just going to invite adversary countries, but you invite allied countries as well, and let's just have election observation, and then we can't say that an election is stolen or not. It's uh, it but we also, to come back to the point of this little question, is like, we do need to do more in our democracies to get people engaged, and to say, like, look, the reason you guys are apathetic is because things are going poorly in your community. Well, get out and get involved in your community. Pay attention to local elections; those matter a lot. If you say you're like, oh man, there's so much litter, there should be a law. The government should do something. Well, maybe not. The litter, when there's litter in front of my building here, I pick it up and I put it in the trash. There's lots of people have organized to clean up parks and things like that. And maybe you need to get the police involved because somebody's going and illegally dumping. That's kind of a bit of an escalation. But get involved in your community. I think we need to start with that. We need to start that at home, in our home democracies, in Canada, America, Britain, is get people more engaged in what they can do to improve their country. And then that will give us, I think that will lead into us having the confidence to go out and say to the countries where autocracy is metastasizing, come on guys, there's a better way. Get in, you can get engaged too. Here's how we say, I think it's fair to say that we are having a crisis of democracy in a lot of Western countries. We can meet that head on by just getting more involved. And once we've done that, we will build sort of a roadmap for other places in the world that are struggling against autocracy, and say, hey, look, when we started to doubt ourselves, we started to doubt democracy in the West. This is how we came back onto our path, and that will help us expand the tools that we've already developed in growing democracy. And hopefully it will help this spread of autocratic cancer.
And one of the things that Ukraine's done, which is still an experiment in progress, but I think again has gone beyond what any country in the West has done, and that is to say, if you're an oligarch, if you're a wealthy individual with business connections, whether those are even known or unknown, and we know that Russia has often used business networks and oligarchs in order to extend its influence. They've been told that they cannot own majority stakeholdings in any broadcast media or any significant public communication platform. That, to me, is one of the areas where the West has been in steep decline, because oligarch interest has really, at least in my view, it's inflamed this kind of bicameral Anglo-Saxon combative political environment, sort of the left-right dichotomy, setting some people against each other. There's a commercial interest in doing that, and oligarchs, of course, will want to do that. They'll sacrifice values for profit.
It's a nightmare. It's the, if it leads, it leads. And so let's get really controversial stuff on our news shows. Let's make sure that we've got, I can only use American examples because it's what I'm familiar with, but Tucker Carlson and Rachel Maddow, mutually cursing one another on their given platforms, but not ever having an adult conversation, certainly between them. Um, and yeah, when you have sort of well, we've got a lot of oligopolies in Canada too, as well, across multiple industries. And when you head in that direction, and I'm not a fan of our sort of two-party states either, because I think honestly, if you have a two-party state, you have a one-party state. I'm much more of a fan of things like proportional representation. But without going into lots of technical stuff that's not relevant to this conversation, no, the oligarch interest in having okay, my group of newspapers and media companies, we represent this A view, and the other oligarch, his group of companies represent the B view. Now, neither of us care at all about the A or B view. We have the appropriate connections that the whoever's elected doesn't really matter to us. But yeah, having that almost like forced divestiture, like just saying like that's nice that you own this company, but it is too important to be that concentrated. But again, like we're on a knife's edge on that one, because many people will rightly point to that as being a bit of it is not necessarily an authoritarian move, but it is the use of government authority to go and say, no, you're not allowed to own too much of this or that, Mr. Oligarch. But I think it's one that's completely justified, because you part of like the spread of information or the only way that you're ever going to control a democracy is by manipulating information. I think that's quite fair to say, because you need to fool people into doing things rather than forcing them, because then once you begin with naked force, then it just stops being a democracy. No, so it is, and that is a great example that can be set for us. It's just kind of like we're not going to treat the oligarchs like kulaks and take everything from them, but we are going to force a little bit of divestiture and just say, look, you're just not allowed to run this anymore. You can have all kinds of arguments for it, that's fine, but as a democratic nation, we've decided that you're not allowed to run it anymore. It's worth looking at, and that may go quite, if we were to do something like that in the West, it may go quite a distance in healing the divide, just because we're not having a narrative pit us against one another as much. But I don't know. I these days I'm much less informed on affairs in the West than I am about things here. So I'll hesitate to make any strong prognosis.
Well, I've got two areas of questions, and I'm kind of rather hoping that these become regular conversations, because I know you appear on Mriya Report. I do as well. Once or twice a month at least, and I think there's almost infinite things to talk about. So hopefully, this could become a sort of serious discussions similar to the ones with Joe Lindsley and others. I think that would be incredibly powerful for the audience. But the two questions today, at least, one is touching back on escalation management, and then we'll end up with a training question. Now, permissions have grudgingly been given for Ukraine to be able to strike Russian territory, especially where troops are massing north of Kharkiv. But there is still this sense that it's being micromanaged, that Ukraine is being told exactly how to fight the war and is being expected to fight it with, one hand tied behind their backs. Is this deadlock going to be broken? How's this mindset going to be broken? It's not there in every single Western country. I think France and Britain seem to have fewer of these sort of restrictions in their thinking. But
Mhm.
France and Britain do not necessarily have the resources at the scale that, say, Germany and US do. And those two countries clearly are, in some ways, coercively controlled by Russian nuclear threats and propaganda.
To a degree, yes, but the so being Canadian, we have to pay attention to American politics, I think even more than our own, which is a problem we need to deal with. But I'm much more familiar with the American case, and I know that even within the political parties, we know that there are separate factions, and I think even within the White House, there are, if not factions, different schools of thought, maybe. So you have the escalation managers. The king of them is Jake Sullivan. But then you have I don't know what you would call the others, the maybe the full supporters, and I think maybe that's represented by Anthony Blinken. Uh, seems to be that he's more forward with that. But I don't know. I don't have too many insider connections to know. But I think that deadlock is going to be broken by a couple of things. One, there's this really great sort of, I guess I'd call him an analyst on Twitter, goes by John Ridge. I don't know if that's his real name, but I'm basically taking this from him because I agree with him. But he said that Ukrainian forces will kind of salami slice their way to full strategic freedom when it comes to long range fires and Western weapons being used in Russia. And basically, that what salami slice means is, they'll just push it just a little bit further. Like, you gave us permission to do this, so we're just going to go one step over and one step over, like maybe into the next oblast, because there's a logistics hub there. Not the Bel. Sorry, I say Belgorod in the Ukrainian way as a joke, but anyway, not in the Belgorod Oblast, but the next oblast over. And then, oh, well, there's a logistics hub that is, I know you told us near Kharkiv. Well, down in like southern Kharkiv region, northern Donetsk region, there's a logistics hub just across the border. So we'll hit that one. And I think that salami slicing will show um, through some time, they'll say, well, hey, we've hit stuff as far away as here with Western weapons. It has not led to any escalation. And I think that will help tone down the escalation fears. And then simultaneously, I think that you will have pressure from especially the European allies, since so many of them have now said, anything we donate, we're happy for it to be used on Russian territory. I think that will put pressure on on the Germanys and the U.S. on Germany and the U.S. I was going to say the Germanys and the U.S.s of the world, but that's Germany and the U.S. Um, but yeah, so I think that those two combinations of sort of us here pushing the boundaries and the other allies kind of tapping their watches and saying, hey, let's push things forward. I think that's what's going to break the deadlock. Um, who knows? There could be some black swan event that does. I hope it's like a unexpected election or something, and not something catastrophic here that really changes public opinion. But there could also be a black swan event that just switches it quickly. We'll see.
That's kind of what we've been talking about on this channel right from day one. Autocracies are stable until they're not. they're predictable until they're not. But when they become unpredictable, there's far more ways in which they could go than, say, a democracy, which are unstable, potentially day to day. But in terms of long-term transition of power, you have relative stability. And I've spoken to Russians who are just amazed. Let's say in the UK, you have a government, have a government, have a government, and then suddenly there's some kind of crisis, and it's over, and they resign, and there's this machinery of government that means that the following week, well, everything's changed, but everything's the same. They don't quite wrap their heads around how that works.
Yeah, like you can lose an election and not be executed the next day.
Yeah, and you can
Yeah,
keep your
it's
house and your car, and and
that's it. No, it is a that's oh boy, that is definitely going to be a good discussion for another day because that's a lot of times why democracies have trouble flourishing in other parts of the world is because the people that currently hold power, they're not necessarily opposed to giving their citizens a voice, but they are opposed to being dragged out into the public square, drawn and quartered. So they would want to have some kind of reconciliation process, or they would want to have some stability guarantees. And it's a weird one because does the which comes first in this case, the stability or the democracy? Um, that's that's it. Oh
that's
boy,
Russia's
sorry, I
big
just
problem. I mean, that's why Putin
yeah.
isn't leaving office because there's no guarantee that he'll retain not only his wealth but his life. Yeah, let's
But
dig into that one in
yeah,
future
we'll leave that for
conversations.
another time.
So the last area really is reverts back to training. You are, as using your own words, you're tailoring your training to what is needed, and you're constantly trying to calibrate that training to what is happening in the war. It'd be great to hear a little bit about that and how that calibration process works. But also, there is a lot of Western training, and again, we've talked about the imposition of democracy, which doesn't work. Is there also a risk that there could be the imposition of NATO training? uh, when trainers arrive, but it reflects the last war. It reflects a 20th century war and not the rapid evolution of what's happening on the ground in Ukraine, evolution of electronic warfare, drones, or even the sort of, the specifics of fighting the Russian way of war.
That's so it's discussed a little bit. It's very widely discussed in the training world, but I don't know how much outside in the general conversation. There are little problems with uh, just yeah, they're rising up out of differences in the experience of war in Western nations and the experience of war here. So one of the biggest problems is a lot of leftover. I call them coinisms. Coin is counterinsurgency. Um, there's just a lot of coinisms left where, we're thinking about heavily guarded supply convoys that are moving between bases, and if they come across any opposition, they're going to wipe them out because the convoy is armed more heavily than the opposition. And then there's always air assets available, and the medical evacuation is you can reasonably expect a person to be evacuated from the point of injury directly to a hospital within an hour because the Black Hawk comes and picks him up. And it was a deputy battalion commander with this brigade. The first time I met him, he's a phenomenal instructor. We were watching a lesson that he was delivering, and it was perfect. It was beautiful. It was everything I could have asked for. And it shows that the indigenous Ukrainian ability to develop training is massively advancing, which is really good. But always there's room for help. But no, one of the things that the first thing he said to me is he made a joke. He said, listen, before you guys even get started, I just have to tell you there are no helicopters. And it's just kind of he was saying it as a joke, but it is a problem where um, a lot of troops are being trained in the West, and then when it comes to casualty evacuation, they're like, okay, here's the 9-liner. Here's how you get the helicopter to come and land. And that has changed. That has been mostly eliminated, because it's one of the most obvious things that stood out. But it's still that it was ever even coming up, because right from the get-go, people like us, veterans like myself here inside of the country, we could have told NATO helicopter evacuation is completely off the well. I was invited to speak remotely to a collection of NATO doctors and like medical officers, and it was news to them. I told them, I said, forget the golden hour, forget helicopter evacuation. That is not done here, because if you bring a helicopter conservatively within 50 kilometers of the front line, it's probably going to be shot down. And so your point of injury evacuation, that's 2 to 4 people carrying the casualty, if they're non-ambulatory, and then they're going to go minimum 2 kilometers by foot, maximum could be 8 to 10 in a really, really bad situation. Usually it's going to be around 5 or 6. But I visited one of our former students a couple of weeks ago just to talk with him, get some feedback on our training, and just shoot the breeze. And he told me he had one of the shin bone in his left leg was pretty much shattered, and he had to be carried on a litter 4 kilometers, and he weighs like 100 kilos without his gear. Big guy. So getting messages like that to the NATO training, and making sure that that's understood, that's a big deal. But it's something that I can say, I never dreamed it would be the case, but just through it, it's one of these things, these coincidences that I stopped believing in. I stopped believing in coincidences. Anyway, more on that later. But an officer that we worked with here extensively happened to be in a certain city in Germany where there's a certain headquarters, and he ran into a major from Canada who was because Canada has control of the training part of that headquarters, and they started talking, and he mentioned, "Oh, I happen to know this Canadian that's training soldiers in Ukraine," and well, wouldn't you know it, that major is from my old regiment and is one of the officers that I had a very good rapport with. So he calls me up. And so, like that, we're now in direct official communication with at least a portion of the NATO training support mission. And one of the first things he asked me for was a small report. I won't say on exactly what, but I prepared that report for him. And so I can say that yes, there have been little issues of adapting NATO doctrine to the reality of war here. But what's good is that the methodology, we don't so much bring doctrine. We don't really need to bring a lot of doctrine. There's already, like, really the Ukrainians are writing it themselves. What we need to do is bring methodology. And again, it's like we talked about earlier. We will bring the tools, and we will give Ukrainians the tools, and they'll figure out how to use them in ways that we probably wouldn't have imagined. And that will be mutually beneficial too, because we haven't had a conventional war in the West in a long time, or we haven't participated in one, and we're not as it stands, we're not ready for it. And as much as possible, we need to feed the lessons that are being paid for in blood here and make use of them, because if we don't, it will be a bloody insult to the people who've died. So that's I hope that that's a good comprehensive answer on the question. It's something, but it's also, just to cap it off, that's where organizations like ours come in, because I have a foot now sort of in both worlds. I am a NATO senior NCO, retired, albeit retired, but at the same time, I am performing the functions of a training NCO here in Ukraine, and I'm soaking in the Ukrainian atmosphere. So I can help. I understand both quite well, and our instructors are the ones that spend more time here. They pick it up as well, and that's where we are, not only as a resource to Ukraine, but as a resource to the West. And hopefully it's one that they see their see their way through to exploiting to the fullest. Just squeeze us, get everything out of us that you can. That's what we're here for. It's why it's we're a bunch of bloody volunteers working here for the instructors for room and board, and me for free. So like we're clearly we want to get every bit of value that we can out of us, we want squeezed out of us. So that's what we're struggling here, and what we've managed to build a good training relationship that way. And now the next step is how we can work to facilitate better communication and better cooperation between NATO and Ukraine.
That's a fantastic objective. Hopefully, in these kind of conversations and what you're doing in Mriya Report, that actually does hook in a lot of people who will see the value of that and create networks and connections. But Kevin, thank you so much for coming on the channel. I really hope that we get the chance to speak again and pick up, we touched on a lot of themes in depth, and there's other themes we can pick up and cover in future conversations.
I'd love it. I'd love it because and then thank you for having me on, because it's the I think I probably showed off a little bit of my nerdiness on here today, but the conversations that you have on this show are absolutely fascinating for me, and they're of such import, and so I'm very, very honored to be included. So thank you.
No, you bring tremendous value. Thanks so much, Kevin. Slava Ukraini.
Героям слава.